Hi, my name is Michael Wolf, and this is for Best Practices in Gifted and Talented Education. This is my TED Talk called Gifted and Talented Students in Career Learning. Now, a couple things about myself. As a high school student, I was a GT student in AP classes and in accelerated courses, and I really worked hard to kind of maintain my status there. It didn't come easy to me. And my sophomore year, I remember taking 7 classes where it was an honors chemistry class. Just really struggled with, and ended up getting a C plus my first semester. And I remember just being devastated, really trying to keep my grade point average up, and just feeling really disheartened by that. And yet I continued to press on in my honors classes, despite knowing that my passions really didn't ever lie in the sciences. So as an honor student, I kind of related to the idea that there's this internal pressure, the sense of perfectionism that a lot of students felt. Now, in my junior year, I ended up taking on some jobs, one of which ended up where I became a manager for a retailer, working 40-hour weeks. And this was on top of doing honors classes, clubs, and sports, and all of the things that I was told were the gold star things on my transcript. And I did that really even to my senior year, only to find myself as I graduated, as it says here, all dressed up and no direction to go, no real sense of what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew college was the next step without any sense of what I wanted to do with it. I worked really hard to try and make sure I had doors open, but I had no sense of what my talents and skills really were. And that led to my next step, which was going into community college. I didn't want to go to a 4-year without knowing what I wanted to do yet. So my next step was there. And even then, I found myself in an honors program, working pretty hard in this humanities program that they had, where I excelled pretty well. And it wasn't until I really was pressed with that graduation, getting my AA and moving on to university, that I had to really confront what it was I wanted to do with my life. And it's quite an existential crisis. So a lot of GT students go through this issue. And so when we're looking at some of the statistics regarding enrollment of college and where students ultimately go, we see that about 70% hovering around of students from high school end up going into university. With on average about a 40 to 45% of them going to a 4-year out the gate, and then about a 30 or 25 to almost up 30% are going to 2-year college. So it's definitely a course that a lot of students are taking, with the narrative in our culture that this is something that is expected of us, right? And so a lot of students, regardless of whether or not they have a sense of direction, there's just an assumption, especially among honor students, that I'm going to be going to a 4-year university because that's the path to a good career, and so on and so forth. But there's a chasm, there's a gap there that I remember feeling myself, which was this guidance. I don't know where I want to go. I know I want to go to university, but I don't know what for. And what that led to was this really sense of floating and stress that I dealt with because I had no sense of direction. And so high school students understand this issue. A lot of them are dealing with this situation. So one of them, a senior named Chase, said, when gifted kids reach high school, college, or beyond, and eventually realize they can no longer rely on their superior intelligence to produce perfect grades, they may quickly lose a sense of self. I absolutely found myself in that situation, just struggling. While being a GT student, honor student for myself wasn't an easy thing, even out the gate. I never took that for granted. I did kind of take for granted just the next step in my life. Now, another student, a junior, said being gifted has made me place my self-worth and my academics. So I overwhelm myself even if I don't have to, just because I feel stupid otherwise. And there are a lot of anecdotal stories here where students are taking that next level math course or science course or ELA class course or whatever it is. Some of them are required and others that aren't, simply because the idea is I need to fill my cup with as much academics and rigor as I can to make myself competitive for college, without a real sense of reason for it. And while these things are good, and it absolutely helped me in university when it came to being able to endure the the workloads and the expectations there, holding jobs that required 50 plus hours and doing internships. Um, for a while, I struggled with what it was I was doing it for. My motivation was lacking, and I found myself, questioning really what the next step was. So, among other things, we have is this idea that students, where their motivation is coming from at the high school level. A lot of times, that is from their parents. There's a variety of students, even from my own experiences as a teacher, who admit that their motivation as an honor student comes primarily from their parents, or primarily from this sense of I will be a failure if I don't do this, if I'm not getting straight A's, and that is the only path to take. It's the burdensome sense of perfectionism, right? And so, what do we do with this, and how do students ultimately handle this? Well, Katie Booth, who's a gifted and talented coordinator for Scott County High School, said it like this. She said, students should think carefully about what they truly love, and then devote their attention to that. For example, if you know math is your strong suit, focus on classes that allow you to dive deeply into that area, while giving yourself breathing room in other areas so that you can pursue a job shadowing program for math careers. Now, in my particular situation, I remember I definitely took to humanities. I liked history, I liked art, I liked language arts. I was very good at that. But I didn't find myself very attracted to especially upper mathematics and things like chemistry and kind of those more nitty-gritty sciences. Physics was okay, but I still didn't find myself particularly interested in that. Engineering, by all means, I was very excited about, but there wasn't a lot of options when I was a young man. So this idea of being able to pursue those particular skills and talents that we actually have is really important. I think culturally we have a bit of a perverse sort of view that it just all needs to be this top tier stuff, and regardless of whether or not it's a class that is really needed for you, you need to take it because it bolsters your GPA, it looks good to universities, and so on. So one of the things that I think as a culture we're struggling with is really a lack of programs and a narrative. It's a cultural shift that I think is required here. So another quote that kind of speaks to this is from this statement on, or this article on honor students' perceptions of their high school experiences, the influence of teachers on student motivation. And it says, high ability students crave authentic learning experiences tied to real world applications and are more motivated when learning is relevant to their long-term goals. College students who have previously failed high school or college overcame academic difficulties when they had clear career goals, used effective learning strategies, put forth effort, and had external supports. So one of the things in a lot of the research I had, which again was kind of scattered, there isn't a whole lot of research on this right now, is that when students have a sense of direction of what they really want to do, when they know, like, here's a career area I'm really interested in, their focus and their motivation just really jumps up, because now they have a goal, they have a focus. If the goal itself is college, it's much more abstract. And while students will work very hard for that, this kind of I'll figure it out when I get there ends up becoming a challenge, because then what happens is that students find themselves changing career or majors and so on, where it ends up being another issue. So another thing that is spoken to, and I'll get to that a little bit later, is the idea that where it exists, research clearly shows that career education is perceived as important and is well received by highly able youth. So Delisle in 1982 conducted a longitudinal survey that linked the absence of career education with handicaps in making good career decisions. And Clark noted that career education was the most highly rated part of adolescents' high school experiences. And essentially what this is saying is that students really crave this. They want to actually have more guidance when it comes to their career decisions and career paths. They want a little bit of career education. What is available for me? It's really overwhelming. Even looking at, well, what do universities offer and so on and so forth. But those who didn't have this, which is oftentimes these GT students, they sometimes struggle making good career decisions, ones that don't necessarily fit their skill sets. But hey, it makes me a lot of money, or it's one that I've been encouraged to take because the need in our society for that type of thing. And so some of the solutions we have already in our education system are things like career and technical education organizations. So Jeffco has Warren Tech, and Warren Tech provides an opportunity for this. And it says students in 36 innovative programs work with experienced faculty and industry partners to engage in real-world professional projects, internships, and apprenticeships. Every Warren Tech student is taught post-secondary workforce readiness skills, and students earn over 13,000 free college credits and 1,600 industry certifications yearly. So this is obviously a great program, and it's a great opportunity. But there's an asterisk that I think comes with this, because I had something similar to this even when I was in high school. What I found was that the focus and the target audience oftentimes were students where, you know, the traditional high school education, or those who were not necessarily college bound, were kind of geared towards that, or kids who were, you know, struggling academically and needed a little bit more of motivation. So those kids who were like, I'm kind of floundering, right? And the students who were in, you know, those AP courses and GT courses or in IB programs, this was not an option for most of them, because the process was rather restrictive. And so most of those students didn't consider it as, this is a viable option for me. Now, we've made strides with this. Warren Tech, I know, has quite a robust program for programming and engineering, and graphic design, and a lot of those in-demand businesses, including even business leadership. So there's great opportunities there should these students take it. But again, one of the challenges ends up being more of the culture of GT students and those expectations and pressures between the school and parents and society in general of what is expected of them. So one of the things that really needs to happen is looking at making some community-driven change, getting involved as parents, and starting to speak about those different options. As you know, anecdotally, as a senior English teacher, I did a first unit was on writing for application, and the whole entire idea was to write a college entrance essay. And throughout that year, I spoke of different career choices and paths, or different paths of education, including community college and so on. And this was among a regular ed student population. I found myself having pushback. Students were like, well, why are you continuing to encourage community college or these other technical options as if we're not going to make it to university? And I told them it wasn't a matter of, you know, a disbelief as much as it was these are viable options. And I found that culturally speaking, we really struggle with the idea that community college and technical schools are available and viable options for good career paths. And this was among regular ed students, so I can only imagine that an honors level group would have probably rioted at that type of thing. So one of the things to do is also, I think, to support GT students' exploration of career options, figure out a way to weave that in to their learning a little bit. And just, I think, mentor them, have some conversations about what they're interested in and what avenues they have to pursue those. Again, offering resources, talk to them, dispel myths of achievement and university. The idea that, like, hey, I have to go to an Ivy League or my career will just be mediocre, or what it might be, especially nowadays as a university has become an increasingly expensive proposition and investment. Staying in state and so on and so forth, and pursuing more local opportunities, I think is a prudent idea, even if a student is a GT student, if you're not looking at scholarships and free rides and things of that nature. So the other thing again is have them talk to college entrance workers or university counselors about what those expectations are, so that it's a realistic goal for them and how competitive they actually are, and their GPAs and their transcripts at that point in time, especially for the universities that they're interested in. There's been a lot of students I know I've talked to that have had were a little bit disillusioned or unsure about what the expectations were there. So last one, I think, is just reflecting on our own journeys. Like, what was my college experience like myself? How did things turn out for me? Was I all right in the end? And that's an okay thing. So sharing that experience and being honest with that, I think, is another big part of helping to relieve those things with those honor students and allow them some opportunity to thrive. So again, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Michael Wolf.